Morning, everyone. So, just wanted to acknowledge that Innisfil is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history. The Rotary Club of Innisfil acknowledges that this land is the traditional territories of the First Peoples of Turtle Island. It is shared between the Anishinaabe peoples of Bausilei First Nation, Chippewas of Rama First Nation, and Chippewas of Regina Island First Nation, and we thank them for generations of stewardship. This meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people, and as settlers, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. The Rotary Club of Innisfil acknowledges the forced sacrifices that are the foundation of Canadian society today. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. We all rise for the singing of O Canada, please. O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all thy sons command, with glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land. Thank you, everyone. We had a great turnout today, loving this. We had a really good board meeting last night, lots of good things happening in the club. And I would like to turn things over to Al, our Sergeant at Arms.
Good morning, President Tim.
Good morning.
Good morning to our special guest speaker. Where is he? Oh, there he is. So Doctor, it's Raj.
Yes,
Raj Grover, Dr. Grover. But here you're going to be Raj, okay? We're very friendly here at Rotary, all right? Well, Raj, we've heard all about you. You're going to be properly introduced in a few moments. But I wanted to take the opportunity to thank you very much for coming this morning. But more importantly, for everything you do with the RVH. Thank you for everyone here knows the RVH very well, and the staff, the people are wonderful, and you're right in there with all of them. We thank you for everything you do. So our guests this morning, we've got Carol from Innisfil Pride. Good morning, Carol. Nice to see you. Were you at the Lions brunch? Yeah.
No, sorry, I was planning.
All right, okay.
Before you went to church.
All right, we'll talk about that in a minute, but nice to see you, Carol.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Bruce, good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to see you this morning.
Happy to be here.
And you came to see me this morning. You didn't come to see the doctor, right? You came to see
Absolutely.
me,
Yes,
right?
anytime. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to see you.
Well, it's good to see you.
Good to see you guys too.
Okay, Jamie Hardy, where's Jamie? So we had a board meeting last night, Jamie, and I think your name was mentioned every other sentence.
pretty well. Hopefully in a good way.
Where's the Jamie names?
There's probably some things we got planned for you don't even know about, but no, I will leave it at that.
Al, we have one more.
Who else have we got this morning? Oh, we have got Myrta. Myrta, good morning.
Good morning.
And Myrta is a friend of Debbie and Paul.
I correspond with my friend of Donna Rosaglia.
Oh, John Orsini, oh, yes. And
That's good, right? Yeah.
It is.
yeah.
Always.
A lovely lady, a lovely lady. And Myrta is an independent contractor. She does all kinds of things. She's involved in Phil, but you've come to have a look at it, right?
I just.
So listen, where's Eleanor? Eleanor, you got, oh, you're sitting right beside her. You gotta be on your best behavior this morning, okay? All right, okay. All right, okay. Okay, so Lions Brunch. Is Allison here this morning?
No.
Lions Brunch went very well on the weekend. We had, I think we had half a dozen Rotarians from the club, plus there was another 4, maybe 5 Rotarians who were also Lions. I almost said Lionesses, you're not gonna say that anymore. But it was a great brunch. We had 7 tables, 6 people at each table, and we had represented there. We had the Lions, Ice Corps, the Legion, people from the town, people from the library and Rotary, and it was a great chance.
And Pride.
Oh, and Pride, I'm sorry. And
Yeah,
prior,
Jake,
was there,
yeah,
president.
currently,
And it was great. We had a chance to go around and talk about things and talk about what we do and find out about other organizations. It was a wonderful event. It really was. And the food was great. So this morning, I don't want to forget. Oh, yes, it's a special day. So it's President Tim, it's your birthday. No, I
Congratulations.
yes, happy birthday, Tim. So a little bird's been chirping in my ear, and I happen to know that our man about town, President Tim, you're going to be at the Moon Cafe for karaoke.
That's my hope.
What time do you want to get there?
6.
So if you're not doing anything and you want to hear our president make a fool of, I mean, if you want to hear, if you want to hear President Tim in full voice, drop into the Moon Cafe around 6, so you'll see him. But I happen to know that he may not be there because he's going for a massage today, and it's a 90-minute massage.
oh my
He
God.
may disappear. Happy birthday.
Thank you, sir.
All right, that's everything I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always that hope that every single ache and pain is removed your body and just become butter. That's what you aspire to. But yeah, the Moon Cafe started doing karaoke last week. First time there was literally 3 of us there because the weather was really, really poor that night. So everybody was terrified of going out, but it was fun. It was just very, very casual. And as most of us who went to the actual Rotary event the day before, last Tuesday, did test. Great beer, great wine. And it's good to support that. So, and we don't really have currently a karaoke thing happening in the town right now. So people like me who sing, yes, Carol.
Sorry, do you have to register?
Nope,
Oh, you just go in, okay.
just go. Yeah, they operate like a pub.
And they have sweets, and Tuesday night they have like all the sweets.
Tunis,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, they're trying to do differently, and they do quiz night on Thursdays, I believe. So they're trying to do new things and bring stuff. So that's my endorsement for them. All right, Anne, did you want to introduce
Yes,
our?
I would. I'd be proud to. Okay, so our speaker today is Dr. Raj Grover. Now, I asked Raj to give me a few details of his bio, and then I was thinking, gosh, knowing his bio, it will take me half an hour to read bio. So you would be overwhelmed by his full bio. So Raj is a fellowship trained MRI radiologist. He's had 11 years at RVH. He is the medical director of the medical imaging program. He has had 3 years on the RVH Professional Staff Executive, currently past president Professional Staff Association. Is a husband and father of 2 girls, aged 10 and 13 years old. He lives in Innisfil. He's active in the community. He is a board member of the library, yay! And he thrives on building relationships, collaboration, and thinking big. So I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Raj.
Well, I'm not sure I can be as entertaining as the introduction that preceded me, but thank you very much for your time. Maybe I'll just start. I do have a presentation that I gave to the RVH Foundation board a week ago, but in talking with Anne and also some feedback from Pamela, I realized that there's a lot going on in imaging that maybe not everyone is so aware of, and what things are and how an X-ray is different from an ultrasound or a nuclear medicine scan. So I thought what I could do today instead of my presentation is just give you kind of a flavor of what's being done here in everywhere, but a lot of the stuff that we do does set us apart. And then maybe I could come back and give my formal presentation another time, and that's more of a kind of the real kind of the highlights, like really kind of a few interesting stories that kind of demonstrate for you what could be done, what's really being done today that really sets us apart at RVH, and what could be done in the future that would be a kind of things to strive for. The stuff we're talking about right now, kind of behind the scenes. So is that sound okay? So I mean, I think the obvious place to start is X-ray. So I just came in this morning and pulled up some images from the internet just to give you a flavor of kind of what the machines look like, and then I'll give you a sense of how the images are acquired and what the end result looks like too. So this is an X-ray machine. There's the X-ray tube is in here. So X-rays are generated from here. And for instance, there's a detector on this side. In this tray, there's a detector that's effectively like the film in a camera. So the X-ray tubes are like the light that reaches the film in a camera. I mean, the X-rays that are generated. A patient or a person would lie down here, and if you're imaging their chest would be kind of centered over this film, and we would generate X-rays at the push of a button, and those X-rays would cross the patient and reach the film. And so everywhere where there's air or really soft tissues, there's more penetration, and those parts on the film should turn up black. And everywhere where there's something dense blocking the X-rays, like bone, you would get white on the X-ray. So this, for example, is an X-ray of a hand. So you can see the muscles in the hand, the soft tissues, turn out gray on the X-ray because more of those X-ray beams penetrate. And then the bones, because they're so dense and they block a lot of the X-rays, they turn up white. And then everywhere where there's just air, like the space in between fingers, those turn up black. So to show you, for instance, a chest X-ray, the black parts are the air in the lungs, and then you see the ribs that are bone, and this kind of grayish area is the heart in the middle of the chest. So, I mean, I imagine a lot of us in this room have had X-rays, and that's kind of the starting point for radiology. But of course, it gets more interesting. So I'll show you. I have to. You can't talk about ultrasound and not show a picture of a baby, right? So this is an ultrasound machine. Now, ultrasound is completely different, but again, you're kind of broadcasting out energy and expecting some type of response so you can generate an image from it. Ultrasound works exactly like radar. You're using sound energy, and it comes from these little handheld probes that are kind of hanging off the side of the machine. There's a long one here, and there's these smaller ones that are handheld, and a sonographer, a technician who works in ultrasound would basically apply the probe to a body part, and the probe generates sound energy that travels into the body and bounces back. Just like in radar, it bounces back, and the time it takes for that sound to bounce back is how images are generated. So ultrasound allows us to image things, mostly things that are fairly close to the surface of the body, because you can't push that sound too deeply into the body, but also it allows us to image without radiation. So that's sound waves instead of radiation. So obviously when you're imaging sensitive areas or babies, or you might like to avoid radiation exposure, and ultrasound is a good modality for that. So yeah, this is a picture of a baby, and you can see the ultrasound probe was probably resting here on the mother's tummy, and it travels in, and you can appreciate that the time it would take for that ultrasound sound beam to travel right to the back, bounce all the way back to the detector, is longer, and those differences in time are how images are generated. So now I thought we'd talk about nuclear medicine. This is effectively a PET CT, or it's a nuclear medicine camera that is attached to a CT scan. So this kind of ring donut shaped structure at the back is a CT scanner, And this part here is a gamut camera. It's a camera that we use to detect radiation. And a patient would lie on this table and have a PET scan. Like a nuclear medicine scan and then a CT kind of back to back in the same room, in the same sitting. So how nuclear medicine works is in the case of nuclear medicine, you actually give the radiation to the patient. They might breathe it in for a lung scan, or they might eat it for a scan that evaluates the gallbladder or the stomach. That's an egg sandwich that has radiation in it. Or most often we inject it through a vein. And the radiation is a pharmaceutical that's attached to another pharmaceutical that goes where we want it. So a bone scan is where the radiation is attached to a chemical that we know goes to the bone. It goes to where bone is growing or turning over. And so, so if you have a healing fracture, that's going to take up a lot of radiation on a nuclear medicine scan. And then what we do in nuclear medicine is we give the radiation and then we wait a certain amount of time and then we take pictures. So the pictures are effectively just us watching to see where the radiation traveled in the body, and we can use that to generate these type of images, for instance. So this is a bone scan where the radiation travels on a chemical that goes to bone, and you can see the normal skeleton takes up all the radiation, but then there's areas where there's extra bone turnover. So there's maybe healing fractures or maybe a tumor in the bone or something that's causing a healing response, and that's what we see as brighter spots. So this is a bone scan, and we can, like I said, in that we can do a bone scan and then CT scan at the same time and superimpose those pictures to see kind of more precisely where things have traveled in the body. So there's special cameras that we use to image the heart in nuclear medicine. And in that case, you have two cameras that are kind of at different angles. So we can image the heart at different angles at the same time. And that allows us just to do a faster study, twice as fast, because two images are being collected at the same time, but also where the heart is pumping and it's moving. And so to be able to watch it from two different angles at the same time is advantageous. Now talk a little bit about CT. So CT is, like I said, there's this ring that you would see in the room, and a patient is lying on a table, and the table travels slowly through the ring while the radiation is being applied and the images are detected. In CT, there's a circular detector in this ring. There's also an X-ray tube in this ring that's just like an X-ray. It's creating an X-ray beam, and that beam is traveling effectively right across the ring to the detector that's on the opposite side. But you can imagine 360 degrees, so also 360 detectors all the way around, and an X-ray tube that's now spinning super fast, and it's sending X-rays across. So an X-ray traveling from this side to this detector, and then the X-ray tube moving a centimeter this way and sending another X-ray beam across to the next detector. And this is happening very fast. So the time it takes to do a CT scan, for instance, of the chest might be 15 seconds. And in that time, that X-ray tube has traveled around hundreds of times and sent hundreds of tiny X-ray beams through that are detected, and a computer takes all that information and generates images that look like this. So this would be what a typical CAT scan looks like. Now you can, like this is a CAT scan of a chest, and what we do, we get basically a set of images, like a slice effectively of the chest, and then we move down 5 millimeters and have another slice, and then we move down 5 millimeters and have another slice. And so on our computer screen, we can scroll through these. So it's like scrolling from top to bottom through an entire chest. It might be 200 images, and then the computer can actually take those images and generate front to back slices or side to side slices. And this is all done by computers with the same set of data. The patient's not being scanned 3 times. One scan, one set of data, and then we can reconstruct it and use computers to look at it in different ways. And you compare this to a chest x-ray. So chest x-ray, you get that one silhouette effectively of the chest. You'd see kind of that one snapshot in time, whereas here you get 600 images that are front to back, side to side, top to bottom, all captured within about 15-second time frame. Now, so to MRI. So MRI is what I love, and it's another donut. So you're basically going through this massive donut, and there's a table that's kind of sliding through. In MRI, we really focus our scans to certain parts of the body. So this young girl is about to have a head MRI. So you see this coil, or this apparatus that her head will sit in the center of, is the coil that is going to be receiving all the information that's collected. And we try to keep that as close to the body part as possible. And we try to center it inside the magnet. So I should say the big donut that you see there, that's a massive magnet. Like the type of magnet where if you walked in the room and you had a keychain hanging on your belt, it would fly off like a projectile into the center of the magnet. And there's pictures, you can find them on the internet of chairs, like the technologist brought a chair too close to the room and the chair just flies off like a projectile into the center of the magnet. These are strong magnets, and there's a lot of safety concerns around that.
Yeah.
So with MRI, it completely different technology, and also doesn't use radiation at all. But with MRI, if you can believe it, you're turning on and off a magnet like thousands of times in very short time frames. So you hear a noise that's just basically on and off, on and off, on and off. And what it's doing is it's exciting the smallest atoms in your body. So when you have water molecules in your body, and each of those water molecules has 2 protons and an oxygen. So hydrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen. Those hydrogens spin. Believe it or not, they're spinning. Then when you turn a magnet on, all the spins, which are random, every hydrogen is spinning in a different direction. When you turn a magnet on, they all line up. So all the spins are spinning in the exact same direction. And then if you turn that magnet off, they kind of go back to being disorganized. And in MRI, we turn the magnet on and off a million times. So we just measure how long it takes for those protons to get disorganized again. Sounds like if CT sounded like science fiction, MRI is like the next level of science fiction. But what we're able to do is, what we understand is that water molecules in different environments will relax at different rates. So, if a water molecule is trapped in bone, it will relax very slowly. Whereas if a water molecule is in a tumor in your body, it will relax a lot faster. And we use that difference in understanding of how those times differ to generate images. So the images look like this. This is an MRI for brain, and you can imagine again. These are slices. Like you can see the eyes in the front, and the nose is right here. But you're basically taking 5 millimeter slices. They're not slices. they're effectively slabs of information. And so with the MRI, we can do all that excitation that I described right here. And then we can move down 5 millimeters and do it again, and move down 5 millimeters and do it again. And that's how we generate these images. Again, we could pick any plane we want, from side to side, front to back, top to bottom. In MRI, you have the possibilities are endless in terms of how you can angle and collect the images. And the technologists are so highly specialized that we have technologists that specialize in the musculoskeletal system, and others that are more specialized in the brain and the spine. And so it ends up being very specialized, but the images, of course, allow us to see great detail. And now mammography. So I think probably a lot of people have a sense, but that mammography is effectively a form of X-ray, and it's designed to kind of with the limitation in mind that breast tissue, like the difference in density. Remember, I said that X-ray is all about differences in density, and unfortunately, the difference in density between a breast tumor and normal breast tissue is very minuscule. Like they're almost the same density. So a special form of X-ray called mammography has been defined to kind of allow for very subtle differences in density to show up on a mammogram and allow us to detect cancer. These are just two images from a screening mammogram that would have been acquired in a machine like this. So the woman's breast is effectively compressed on this tray, and then a paddle is brought down to kind of keep everything still, and then an X-ray is generated in this apparatus through the breast into a detector that's at the bottom. And I think that's it. I guess the one thing I forgot to show you is what an angiogram looks like, but maybe I can describe it. An angiogram is like, it's a special imaging procedure where you would have dye run into blood vessels, and you would take effectively you'd be taking an X-ray of that dye in blood vessels. Maybe I'll just hold the picture really quickly so it kind of makes sense. But question then is, how do you get the dye into those blood vessels? And the way you do it is you go through, it's a needle puncture into an artery, usually in one of the groins, the left or the right, and those are accessible. They're very close to the skin surface, and we know the anatomy very well, so we can kind of feel an artery and put a needle into it. And with that needle, we'll kind of push a wire into the aorta. And when it's sitting, you can almost see the wire. I think the arrow is pointing at something else, but you can almost see the wire.
It's a wire?
It's a very special wire, and over that wire, they'll push a sheath, like a long tube, and they'll park the tube at the end of the wire, and then they'll pull the wire back, and then they'll inject dye through the tube that's left there, and then they'll take X-ray pictures while the dye is being squirted in. So you'll get maybe 10 pictures in a row, and it'll be like watching a movie. And then for instance, if they wanted to get that wire up this artery, they would take that first picture, and then they would put the wire back in, and they pull the catheter back that far. And then there's ways that you can twist the catheter and get it to turn the corner. And then they would move that wire and catheter up to here, and then pull the wire back again and inject some dye, and then they'd have another.
It's amazing. I think we use the Rotary on my toilet.
It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
And not too quick that you think.
Oh, yeah.
This is from your leg, right?
From your leg, yeah. From your, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And I think that's it. Like, that's just a flavor of kind of what can be done. And this is like bread and butter stuff that's being done, you know, at RVH every single day. We do 200,000 exams a year. And so you can imagine there's hundreds of exams every day.
Do you do PET scans there?
Yes, we do.
And how's?
Oh, no, I mean, sorry. The PET scanner is being installed currently. The construction is underway now. The delivery is meant to take place in the next month or two. And installation, and we will be doing PET scans by third quarter this year. Yeah, so those, we will be doing PET scans. Yeah, that was a huge push in the last.
Yeah, so you would prefer me to Toronto?
Yes, we send people to mostly to Sunnybrook, but also PMH currently.
What is the noisy one and why is it so noisy?
So that's an MRI, and the noise is the magnet turning on and off. It's that, yeah, MRI is noisy.
And what, how do you deal with people that have claustrophobia?
Well, yeah, and that I meant to say, it's difficult, like, and you can imagine.
If you're a normal size cup or a healthy size.
Keep your eyes closed. Don't look.
If you cover like a taco, you know. Yeah, cover your face.
Ask them to play your favorite music on the phone.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine, it's not only that you're in the center, and so for the MRI images to be acquired, the part that you want to image has to really be in the very center of the magnet. Like, it can't be off to the side, it can't be halfway out, it has to be in the center. And these coils that we use, the apparatus that you see on her, her head will slide into the center of that she needs to be centered in that coil. So you can imagine it is quite an experience. Like, if you're claustrophobic at all, this will be the day. I mean, we manage it. The technologists are so good at talking to people, and a lot of it is just kind of hearing a voice. And so there's communication that while the technologist is scanning, he or she is not in the room. It's just the patient, because those magnets are so strong, it's just the patient. And sometimes, you know, for a young patient, a family member is there, maybe holding their hand. But we also use earplugs, and you can play music. Like, you could bring an AirPod or something and listen to music, and, you know, helps take your mind off the experience, but also maybe
Put a towel, they ask you if you'd like a.
yeah,
I think they offer like headphones as
Yes.
well to cancel out the noise.
Now, the other question I have is, back in 2009, I was in a serious car accident and had multiple fractures, and every day they were taking 2 or 3 x-rays of my chest. And it went for like 2 weeks like that. What's the damage that those x-rays can do to your body?
So minimal, like, there is radiation exposure for sure. And we measure that. We have a really good sense of how much the radiation that you receive for a chest x-ray versus a chest CT versus something else, and compares to the amount of radiation you receive from kind of living in Innisfil at sea level for a year. You know, we have those kind of, there's background radiation, and we measure compared to background, and we try to give like, you know, as little as possible. So it's definitely part of the job is radiation sparing, but sometimes you have to balance that benefit of having the information that it provides with the risk of radiation exposure.
So, sorry, go ahead.
My brother-in-law goes to imaging and he gets something called pericentesis.
Paracentesis, yeah,
You
yeah.
say it much better. So what would they use?
So
Like,
they would
why
use
imaging?
ultrasound. So for a paracentesis is when you take fluid out of the belly. So he would have some reason that he's
It's on
generating fluid.
dialysis.
Dialysis, okay. So they would use an ultrasound, and they would put ultrasound on kind of, you know, his belly and try to find the biggest pocket of fluid. And then they would clean the skin and freeze it and put a needle through the frozen area into the pocket of fluid, and then attach that to a catheter that's attached to a vacuum bottle, and the vacuum would suck fluid out. And it might.
It's not so much a question, but an expression of gratitude. I, back in 2016, suffered a severe stroke, and I went through the experience of the catheter in the endovascular thrombectomy. I mean, they went through the groin area, and they pulled out occlusion in the left distal, the carotid, and yeah, just to say thank you for your services. That was wonderful.
Al.
So Doctor, I noticed in professional sports, especially hockey and football and hard contact sports, whenever someone's injured, automatically, if they're going to be out and they're not sure, automatically they get an MRI.
Yep.
It's automatic. Is that because they don't want to work their way through the stages of like the MRI is that's the big one, right?
Yeah, so they all have their place. Like what MRI is very good at is looking at the soft tissues around the bone. But for instance, it doesn't look at the bone as well as a CT scan or an X-ray.
I was just wondering,
yeah.
Is it because they want to quickly find out what's wrong, get the person better and get them back in there, whereas a normal person may have an X-ray first, a couple of other things, and then the MRI is the final one, right?
Well, and I think what's probably happening is you might hear about the MRI, but I'm sure they're having at least an X-ray and an MRI together, and just nobody talks about the X-ray.
And my question on the MRI, the last time I had an MRI, I was told to expect a phone call, and I got a phone call at 10 one night, and I had my MRI at 3 in the morning. Is that still the procedure?
Well, we definitely are scanning 24/7.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know.
They told me it would be about 4 or 5 months, but it was a cancellation.
Oh, your cancellation, yeah, I understand, yeah, for a cancellation, that's how it is, kind of, we add patients every day to fill spots that we see where, because we have a long list of people who are waiting. So the wait time for a regular MRI right now is 6 months.
And how many of those machines do you have?
We have two, and we have approval right now for a third. So we're just in the process right now, kind of planning for that third MRI. And the reality is the two we have will need to be replaced in that time frame as well. So probably within the next.
And is it a good idea to leave your wallet in the car with all your cards?
Yes. I don't bring my wallet into the scanner.
They didn't tell me that.
Oh.
The first time I went to use a credit card, it wouldn't work. And my health card, my everything that's, I had to get everything renewed. They didn't tell me.
Wow.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's good to know.
I have my port installed in radiology.
Yeah.
And that was on a screen. So what kind of imaging were you
So-
using
so-
to make sure it got threaded correctly?
Yeah, that would have been like the angiogram, so when they get into the vein, they would shoot a little bit of dye to make sure then they can see the anatomy and make sure they're in the right spot, and then they would kind of finish the procedure.
Okay.
Yeah.
With the thrombectomy, what type of machine was the MRI they used to put with me, or?
No, it would have been just like that angiogram I showed you at the end. They fish a catheter. This is the internal carotid, or this is the common carotid, and this is the internal carotid on the right side and on the left side. So they would have been putting a wire across that clot and then inflating a basket and pulling it back, effectively removing the clot.
Navigating through the system from going all the way up into the brain. What would be the time span of that?
Fairly short, though, because those are very large vessels and they know the anatomy really well. It becomes tricky when you're getting into smaller vessels, for instance, in the liver or in the kidney, and you have to really choose the right one. Once things start branching and get smaller and smaller, that's where it takes more time. But to get from the groin to here would be measured in minutes, seconds and minutes. Okay. And then to get up to here would be another few minutes, because those are the largest vessels and we know the anatomy really well.
How did they got the pieces? So they put the catheter through and there was a wire or something? You said, did they put a grabber of something in there to pull?
They have a basket, like a basket that will kind of engage with the clot, and then when they pull that, effectively, and then when they pull it out, the clot comes with it.
Yeah, I did it a few times.
I was just like,
Carol has a.
Yes.
when it comes to CT scans,
Say you're doing the chest, the abdomen, and the pelvis, and you get a dye. Why is it then that sometimes along with the dye, you also drink a contrast?
Oh,
What is the
sometimes,
reason
so
for that?
So the dye is contrast that is in your veins and arteries. And the contrast that you would drink would be meant to stay in your bowel, your stomach and your bowel. And so it allows us to kind of differentiate.
So you also
areas.
you'll see on the outside of the bowel, not necessarily just the inside of the bowel?
Well,
the
if there's,
bowel area?
if there's contrast on the inside of the bowel, for instance, we could make sure that something is bowel and not
Growth.
another part, yeah, another part. But we could, it also allows us to look at the bowel wall, because once the bowel is distended with some contrast, the wall is more apparent. If the bowel's not distended and kind of collapsed, then it
So if you had like a cancerous growth on the outside of the bowel, they would do that in order to make sure, like to be able to see if the growth has gone from the outside to the inside.
yeah, for instance, yeah,
Okay.
for instance.
Got you.
Yes,
So the MRI, that's the ultimate, right? That's the biggie.
well, I mean, they all work together.
Is there anything on the horizon for radiology? Is there something better coming down the?
I mean, what's happening now is, for instance, speed. Like, for instance, the MRI from a decade ago, like, I'll give you an example. When I started at RBH, we had 2 brand new MRI machines. That was 11 years ago. And we would be able to scan a head in 30 minutes. So 30 minutes in that coil in the center of the magnet, and that's where claustrophobia becomes a real issue. The magnet that we install, the next magnet that we install, we'll be able to do a head in 2 minutes.
Wow, okay.
So that's where the technology is going. It's not there's another big thing coming down the pipe. It's just that
They're measuring
the time.
water changing orientation.
And the other thing is you have portable machines. I've seen them bring a portable machine into the emergency, so that you don't have to take the patient from there to the.
Yes, we do that. Yeah.
That must be a huge help to you.
Oh yeah, I mean, it helps a lot. And if we go to the operating room and do x-rays while people are in the middle of an operation, we go to the intensive care unit, do x-rays there and emerge, and ultrasound as well. So yeah, portability is another.
Do you have a lot of those units?
We have 4 portable x-rays, and in the hospital, there must be at least a dozen portable ultrasounds in one department or other. Yeah.
Dr. Raj, could you speak on the mammogram a little further? So when you first initially go for the mammogram for the x-ray, if they see a spot or something in question, the next step then would be go to an ultrasound. Why, my question is, why would they not do the ultrasound first, which is much kinder to the breast than the mammogram itself? So,
Yeah, so I mean, good question. So I mean, for one, like all the studies around screening and the benefit of screening are based on mammography. Ultrasound is like finding a needle in a haystack. So it's when you have an area that you want to examine, for instance, an area that was abnormal on the mammogram or that stood out on the mammogram, you kind of plan the ultrasound around that area. But to do an ultrasound of the whole area, like you miss a lot. Yeah.
So just so I understand, so the ultrasound would be like more fine tuning.
Yes, yeah, fine tuning, or if a woman feels something and we could go to that area and really examine it well, or if there was an area on the mammogram that stood out and we wanted to kind of fine tune, like you say, that would be the useful ultrasound.
What about a male with breast cancer?
Same thing.
That'd be kind of difficult. We're not doing a mammogram on a male.
Yes, but we do it. Yeah.
Yeah, my neighbor had that.
And the second part, if I can just ask one more thing, is there anything down the road or in process that are also making the mammogram a little bit kinder?
They work on it. Like I know it's a thing. Like that compression is actually so important because it spreads everything out. Like if you just like, it'd be hard to have a useful mammogram if everything was not spread out, but it also prevents any motion. So there's a few reasons, but they're working on it, like they're softer paddles and warming and
Like maybe more automated because depends on, you know, the lovely nurses in
Yeah.
there doing them.
True.
Sometimes it can be very aggressive.
Yeah.
painful for many days after.
Yeah.
Other times, it's
No.
very gentle and there's probably, you know, just enough compression.
Yeah,
They seem to back off and say, oh, sorry, too much.
yeah, too much.
Where if it was automated, you know, when there's a pressure point or something, I think it would be a lot more bearable. And,
Yeah.
like, is there any damage then? Like, for example, if there was cancer, let's say, God forbid.
Yeah.
But if there was cancer in there and you have this mammogram that's pushing down, and just in my head, I'm thinking, are you squishing that cancer cell? So you're like exploding it or spreading it?
Yeah.
Like, is there any possibility of that?
I don't think so. I mean, like, but I mean, these cancers, when you feel like that, for instance, like I biopsied cancers that'll bend your needle. Like, you know, like they're tough. Like, I don't think that there's a risk that you're gonna squish it and it's gonna spread because you squished it.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Testicle cancer.
Even space ultrasound. Ultrasound, yeah.
Oh.
Because they're small things to look at.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I said if men had to go through that. would
Yeah, it was
fall
probably
asleep.
designed by men. It was probably designed by men, yeah.
Yes.
Doctor,
Yeah.
the doctor, you get someone coming into the emergency who's unconscious, and they've been either a victim of a violent crime or car accident, and they're a mess. Where do you start? Do you have to X-ray to see what's there?
Yeah, I mean, they have protocols, like the trauma team will have a protocol, they do like a head to toe exam. And they, usually that person's in a collar, so they have to clear their C-spine, make sure there's not any.
I'm thinking
C-spine.
that the doctors and the nurses, they can see things, but
There's a series of imaging that they'll do kind of routinely in that situation, usually neck, like cervical spine x-rays and chest x-ray 100% all the time. And then they can kind of see if there's any indication that there's a fracture of a long bone. They'll do those x-rays. They all get done in Emerge. They have special trauma stretchers that have the x-ray detector plates built right in. So it's very streamlined, like that's kind of,
Been there, done it, got the t-shirt.
Yeah.
You know, been airlifted and I survived.
What's the goal wait time for imaging? Like,
okay,
right now it's 6
so
months.
for instance, it's 6 months for a routine MRI. And the goal for that MRI is I think it might be 35 days or something, like, you know, give you a sense, like 5 weeks, that type of thing. But we have P1s, P2s, P3s, P4s for MRI, for instance. So we separate out the priority. And for instance, our like P1s are done the same day, probably the same hour. Our P2s are done within a day, and our P3s are done, like they're meant to be done within 3 weeks. Most of them are done sooner than that. It's the P4s, the ones that are the routine, you know, you see your family doctor and your knee is sore, your back is sore, and you're going in for an MRI. Those are the ones that are waiting kind of beyond what is reasonable. The ones that are urgent are getting done because we always make time for those. And that's why, you know, from time to time, rarely you might get a call and find out your study was canceled. And that's usually because we had to do something emergent.
they ask you if you want to go on the cancellation list. So I went from 6 months to just I think it was just a few days. It was 3 in the morning and they had no one.
Yeah,
They weren't able to arrange.
And we
So
have-
I went and got it.
I'm the queen of the 3 in the morning. It's the best, you're claustrophobic.
Yeah.
You just sleep through
Right,
it.
yeah, that's true.
Is it true the government though is cutting down on patients that would request an MRI over, say, a CAT scan or what have you, or?
Yeah, I think they have guidelines, like I don't really interact with that too much because it usually is kind of comes from the family doctor. And so I don't know if there's a real crackdown, but there's guidelines and people try to be reasonable about like the resource, so.
We're almost out of time, but I just, one last question. Have you ever had situations where you've actually had a patient continually referred to you from a doctor where you actually said, I think this patient's going too often? We used to joke that I wouldn't ever need a nightlight because my doctor would send for X-rays like all the time. So is there a point where it gets to be too dangerous, where the background of radiation actually is?
I mean, it does happen. It does happen. Usually there's a conversation that occurs and just kind of, sure you need all this. And, we just did this study a month ago. It's, maybe it's too early and nothing really changed that. Yeah, it happens.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, we are almost at the time of this meeting, but we want to thank you so much. This has been amazing. And I think just the response we had from all of the members and our guests with the questions, I think just tells you that a follow-up would be more than welcome.
I'd be happy to do that.
All of us can concur that you've done it. So I'd like to present this little certificate to you. Thank you, Dr. Grover. So that just I think you were going to make a donation to the Polio Plus program.
Thank you.
On your behalf.
Thank you very
And
much.
so yeah, we will.
I appreciate it. So thank you very much for your time.
We have, unfortunately, we do not have time for a good news round, I don't think. Janet, do you have anything for Learning Corner today?
Basically, Learning Corner, I want everybody to remember about the Rotary Foundation and make sure that people are looking more into what the Rotary Foundation does. It's where we get our grant money. And with the grant money, we could do our events and things like that if we didn't have those grant monies as well. So look to see how you can donate personally to the foundation. I think that's important, and that you could donate as little as $20 or $10 a month, and it will help to go towards building our grant funds that the district as well as global distribute. So
okay, that's great. Thank you. Carol, did you want, I know you have a meeting coming up on the 5th of March, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
It's at the LaFleur United Church. Innisfil Pride is trying to save the church in the Grange Hall. The church actually began in Bellier. It was a Methodist church, and it was moved to its current location, I believe, in 1850. And then the Grange itself, I believe, opened in 1930. So as we know, with COVID, it has really affected congregations, as well as just a lot of people who no longer want to attend church, or they want to do it privately. So like I said, Innisfil Pride, we need to try to save the church, because if the church closes, so does the Grange Hall. The Grange Hall itself can be rented $40 an hour. That's all in tax, like just $40 even. It is, sorry to say this, is cheaper than the Legion in Bellier or even the Lions Club. It is a community hall. It's filled with history when you go in there and you look at it, with the tongue groove floors and the whole bit. So this Sunday at 10 o'clock is their service, followed by a potluck and a brainstorm. Innisfil Pride, with a fundraiser that we did with Chili at the Grange, we raised them $1,207, and that was clear of cost. And as well as renting the hall for our Heart of Fire Festival, we also did a raffle and raised them an additional $160. So they were quite happy with that. And we also have a GoFundMe going. I'm not sure if everyone has noticed that on Facebook. I've been sharing on Alcona Chat, Innisfil Chat, my Gem of the Lake, everywhere, from Cookstown to Big Bay Point. So if any of the members here could at least even just share to their friends, that would be great, because we need to preserve our heritage. And I'm a fourth generation in Bellier, and I really don't want to see the close of like the church and the hall itself close.
And Carol,
It's from the LaFleur United Church. Sorry?
You're doing a silent auction as well?
We are organizing a silent auction. I do have a flyer out. She was lovely enough to donate some gently used items the other day. I have received other gently used items. So even when it comes to that, that would be wonderful. Initially, right now, like I said, it's just trying to get the donations in, then I can finalize the date where it's going to be held. Innisfil Pride would like to also maybe have like a banquet dinner along with it. So like I said, right now it's just trying to gain new or gently used items. So you can contact me on Facebook. If you're interested, I can give you my phone number. Like I said, just whatever you can do to help, because we really do need to preserve this church.
I think one of the questions that there, Carol, is it's wonderful what Innisfil Pride is doing, but who runs the church right now? Like, who's involved?
Sorry, do you mean?
The running of the church and the Grange, like who?
Her name is Michelle Broadway.
And
She's the
she's
one that
doing her
runs
own?
it out. She's part of, I believe, her husband, and they're members, there's not many members. So those that are on the actual church board, there's about 5 of them. And there are 2 regulars there right now, and it is, they're only open for service other than virtually once a month. And like I said, it's we're fully involved, and a lot of people don't realize about it, and I love what you have in the back about what is good for everyone and how you treat people. When it came to the selling of the tickets for Chili at the Grange, it was brought to my attention. A resident purchased tickets, but she was very upset that it did not say on the tickets that Innisfil Pride had organized it. She felt that I should have included that on the ticket to give her a choice whether she wanted to purchase tickets or not. So I explained that this was for the benefit of the church as a whole. It shouldn't matter which organization is doing it. And she felt that she stated that she wished that it had been a different organization or someone else in the community that had taken on this. I call it labor of love, and I say it's one of our gems in Innisfil. That's what I ran on, Gem the Lake, and that's what I believe in.
You mentioned that the call was $40 per hour, correct?
$40 an hour.
Capacity or an hour? And what's the capacity for that?
I believe it's 120 to sit.
Okay.
Or no, sorry, 100 to sit, 120 to walk around. Like I said, that's where Innisfil Pride is hosting the majority of their events. Their rentals are picking up, thank goodness, because with COVID, even when the government did say, okay, we can start opening up, they didn't, not even when it came to 25 people. Understandably, they weren't taking the risk. And so, yeah, and like I said, any of you that are, you don't have to be religious. The Royal United Church is open to all denominations. It doesn't matter whether you're Anglican, you're like the Jewish, it does not matter. It's just, it's open for all, just to come and just enjoy it.
Thank you.
So Sunday, 10 o'clock, service, potluck.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I wanted to raise one last thing before we go. At the board meeting last night, we discussed our newest fundraiser, the program that Jamie was here talking about in previous weeks, about us having the running with a booklet, going to all the different businesses and having I think a minimum of 72 to 75 to break even. The board as a whole has endorsed it, but it's now coming to the club. Would people in the club like us to do this particular kind of fundraiser this year instead of going out and having a raffle? Is there any objections from the people, or does anybody need more information? I mean, Jamie's
Still need
here.
more feet on the ground, because we have to
Yes.
sell advertising.
It's not gonna, it can't just be, or we will have people who are gonna spearhead the list of what needs to be done where. Is say, and we're looking for people, obviously, I know this person, I know this business, I know this, I can get this. You know, we need those kinds of things. Yes, Anne?
President Tim, can I suggest we put it on next week's agenda? So I didn't know, because I'm not part of the fundraising committee, maybe just the club can hear as a whole what the actual program is.
Okay, well, I say, Jamie's been here now twice. Yeah, I know you were away, right, yes.
Can I get information from you regarding joining the Rotary, please?
Katie, do we have any for membership?
I don't have anything to give you now, but.
Okay.
certainly
Or I can,
contact
Carol, I can
you.
get,
Can
I'll connect you.
Hey, 50/50, last three numbers are 800.
Okay, all right. Thank you all. Have a wonderful week.